inside it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Storch wrote a book called At the Hive Entrance. He said, if you develop the right capacities, you know what's going on in the hive just by watching what the bees are doing on the entrance board. And there was an interesting slide lecture at the Backyard Beekeepers Association by this lady, what's her name? Her name will come to me in a minute. Kirsten Trainer. She did a paper on beekeeping in Celle, Germany, and she showed us one slide and she said, see Hans over there? Hans, who was an elderly meister, bee meister, trained in an apiary where they had skeps, and she said Hans can take a bottom board and look at it, and he knows absolutely everything that's going on in the hive. Because when you had a skep, you didn't have access to the inside. It was a straw skep, okay? And so skep beekeepers had to learn how to diagnose a hive by looking at what's on the bottom board, what falls off. They can tell whether the queen is healthy. They can tell what they're feeding on, what the conditions are, okay? Along comes Langstroth, and now we can take the individual combs out, right? So we don't need to develop those intuitive capacities of being able to read the signature of a hive. We now have to look at everything, okay? Well, we do that by violating the integrity of the organism. If it is in fact a superorganism, to systematically, on a regular basis, take it all apart is essentially to disassemble Dana Cohen and then put her back together. And eventually there'll be consequences for that, you know. It's like surgery. It's like major surgery. So I'm not saying you shouldn't from time to time take things apart like we did up there or whatnot. But we need to always be pushing for the intuitive capacities to understand without making visual determinations. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's a wonderful
I've gone down the road and I've heard a swarm exit from a hive. I've turned around and come back and it'll be going. You know, the swarm will be going. Now, I don't know, it's coincidence or what or was there some sort of connection to that phenomenon? The idea will come in my head, you better go home. There's a swarm that needs to be cared for, you know? And you come back and there it is, you know? Now, it could be just coincidence, or it could be, you know, this relationship that Steiner talks about, the shepherd has for the sheep and the Arab has for his horse. It's an intense kind of relationship that yields a kind of communication that you can't even talk about. That's where I don't claim to have any of that. I wish I did, and I work towards that, but I think that's where we need to go. And eventually the Langstroth hive and even the Kenya hive, with this incessant need to force them to build their combs in an orderly fashion so we can disassemble the hive, I think eventually that will have to go by the wayside. Okay, Si, let's quickly...